attention was given to the mechanics of this bill in order to avoid the pitfalls that the various bill contained, or in order to avoid what I think is the fundamental pitfall, namely promising more than we can produce. Over and over again in the past few years, Congress has, through legislation with high ideals, promised to the American public great new programs which will solve all the social evils of the country. This is one more of that kind of idealistic approach. I have nothing against ideals. I am for them myself, but I wish Congress would not go on spending the money of taxpayers thinking it will be a cure for all our country's social ills, and then not be able to solve most of the ills to which the legislation addresses itself. I made some individual comments on the bill in the report, some of which I think are worthwhile repeating here. I voted to report the bill so that we could get it out on the floor and consider more fully many of the problems which I felt were not sufficiently dealt with in committee. I hope in the process of consideration of this bill, in the limited time we have, that we can correct some of the defects in it. What have we done in this bill? We have authorized $2.9 billion over a 3-year period. The first year's authorization will be devoted to planning and mechanics, and then the major portion of the authorized amount will be spent in the following 2 years. I argued this point before the committee. I got nowhere with it there. But I bring it up again because I believe that if this bill gets through and does not get vetoed, and I think that is somewhat unlikely if it is still in its present form, then when we get into the actual operation and get into the number of applicants called for, under 25,000, we will be in serious administrative trouble. A diagram of this that I drew appears on page 10 of the report. Reference to that diagram clearly shows that we have so many overlapping local councils, state councils, program committees, that the prime sponsor in fact does nothing. There is no requirement that any councils or committees must reach a decision. Nevertheless, that decision has to be reached and made before any program can go forward, so that any one of the councils could sit on its hands as long as it wants to. No matter how many other people want a program to start, it could not even operate. I would say that that is another very pressing problem. It is interesting to me that on the calendar the bill is listed as the Head Start bill. The bill itself is said to strengthen and expand the Head Start program. Now, the fact is there is about as little relationship between this program and Head Start as it is now operating as there is between a monkey and an elephant. There is no relationship. I have seen many children that have been well cared for, who have been well educated, and who have come to the determination that they did not want to do anything, and they have not. They have either dropped out or have not realized their full potential. They have been taken to psychiatrists and psychologists, and they have not proven very much to themselves or to anyone else. However, they have had the benefit of all the services that are supposed to be the very best from the very beginning. I would say once again, and try to emphasize as I've ever seen, I have been in Congress, that there are differences between people, and we cannot get some kind of predetermined standard set up by an expert in Washington and determine that this is the mechanism by which a child will reach his potential. It takes far more than that. When we go on to the question of bureaucracy, and this is a honey, I am not sure I can explain it. I am not sure I can stand here, having been all the way through the hearings and having read the bill and having looked at the wording of the language, and try to explain it to the Senate. I certainly cannot, at least not without the chart on page 10 showing what the various ideas of responsibility of the committees and councils are. In any event, we have to set up a Child and Family Services Council, and usually when we set up committees and councils, we set them up in an advisory capacity. However, we do not do that here. This is what we do with the Child and Family Service Council in this case. They will be entitled to approve annual programs, basic goals, policies, and procedures, the selection of any agency, and will be responsible for the annual child development and family service programs contained in their area. And this is what the Child and Family Group Council does. It is an operating group, and then we come to local program councils and project policy committees. of showing contributory negligence as a defense would rest upon the defendant unless the evidence introduced in behalf of the plaintiff be of such character as to raise a presumption of such negligence on the part of the plaintiff. If you so find, then the plaintiff would not be entitled to recover. By Bob. Now, in November, before the year was up, did Dr. Hill have a discussion with you in which he mentioned $3,500 as a possible settlement range for your case? I never mentioned any settlement case whatsoever. Okay. Now, at some point, Mrs. Dunlap, while you were negotiating with Mr. Hill, didn't you say, in effect, what about my husband's case? I think I asked him that, and what did he say? He says he has insurance. His insurance company pays him. And can I have the answer back, please? And what did you say? Well, I said, okay, I'm going to tell my husband. Did your husband ever talk to Mr. Hill that you know of? I don't know. Weren't you handling your husband's case for him as well as your own in dealing with Mr. Hill? I talked to Mr. Hill one time about my husband's claim because my husband had to go to the doctor to have his neck and his back adjusted. This was the only time I talked to him, and he told me that my husband had insurance and his insurance should pay that. All right.